The deeper you look into history, the more you realize survival wasn't about gadgets or technology. For the medieval peasant, staying alive wasn't guaranteed. It was earned every single season. Crops failed, winters were long, and famine was always a lurking threat. Yet against those odds, ordinary villagers managed to feed themselves and their families year after year, without modern supermarkets or refrigeration. They did it with a set of survival strategies so clever that even today, preppers and homesteaders can learn directly from them. This isn't about romanticized castles and knights. It's about the gritty reality of how common people endured. And if you're serious about food security, whether for self-sufficiency or long-term prepping, these medieval food tricks still hold incredible value. Let's break them down, not as distant history, but as lessons you can put into practice right now. Storing food in underground root cellars gave peasants a year-round pantry. One of the most powerful tools peasants had was the earth itself. They built root cellars, simple underground chambers lined with stone or wood that trapped cool, stable temperatures. Without refrigeration, this was the only way to keep root crops, apples, cabbages, and even preserved meats edible for months after harvest. These cellars prevented rot by slowing bacterial growth, while maintaining enough humidity to keep vegetables from shriveling. Today, root cellars are making a comeback among preppers for the same reasons. A hole dug into a shaded bank, insulated with straw or timber, can keep carrots crisp into spring or potatoes ready for cooking months after harvest. Modern equivalents like basement pantries or buried food storage barrels work on the same principle. If you want food security that lasts beyond your weekly grocery run, this trick from medieval peasants is still as genius as ever. Fermentation turned perishables into long-lasting staples. Peasants couldn't afford waste, you know. Every cabbage, milk jug and grain surplus had to be stretched as far as possible. Fermentation was their secret weapon. Sauerkraut, made from salted cabbage, not only lasted through the winter but also provided crucial vitamin C to ward off scurvy. Milk became cheese and butter, each form lasting far longer than fresh dairy. Beer and ale weren't just for drinking. They were safer than water in many cases and provided calories when food was scarce. For modern survivalists, fermentation is honestly one of the easiest and cheapest preservation methods to master. A jar, some salt, and a bit of patience can transform vegetables into nutrient-rich stores that boost gut health and strengthen immunity. What peasants learned through necessity is now being rediscovered as both survival prep and health practice. When everything fresh spoils quickly, fermented food is the difference between hunger and survival. Drying and smoking preserved meat for the long winter months. Protein was always in short supply for peasants. Fresh meat spoiled within days, so they turned to drying and smoking. Fish hung in smokehouses, strips of venison dried above hearths, and sausages cured with salt and herbs gave them access to protein months after the kill. The method required no ice, only fire, and a controlled environment. In today's prepping world, a simple smokehouse or solar dehydrator can provide the same benefits. Jerky, dried fish or smoked cuts not only store well, but become highly portable. In lean times or during outages, meat prepared the medieval way is practical insurance. What they did to survive cold winters without livestock feed can help us survive modern crises when supply chains collapse. Crop rotation and mixed planting protected soil and ensured steady harvests. One of the most overlooked medieval strategies was the three-field system. Peasants didn't exhaust their soil with monocrops. Instead, they rotated between grains, legumes, and fallow land. This system replenished nitrogen naturally and prevented the kind of soil collapse that leads to famine. Mixed planting, putting beans among grains or herbs among vegetables, wasn't just convenience. It reduced pests and maximized space in small strips of land. For modern gardeners and preppers, this principle is essential. Continuous planting of one crop invites disease and depletes the soil, but integrating peas, beans or clover into rotation enriches the ground and ensures food doesn't fail. The medieval peasant didn't know the science of microbes and nitrogen fixation, but through trial and error, they mastered what many industrial farms have forgotten. Pottage provided a reliable one-pot meal from whatever was available. Daily meals for peasants weren't elaborate feasts, but survival fuel. The cornerstone was pottage, a thick stew of grains, beans, vegetables, and occasionally scraps of meat. It simmered slowly, and ingredients could be swapped, depending on season and availability. This approach ensured nothing went to waste. If there was only cabbage and barley, that became the meal. If a rabbit was caught, it enriched the pot. The genius of pottage wasn't just in nutrition, but in flexibility. It gave peasants a way to stretch limited resources across an entire family. For today's preppers, the idea of a base meal that adapts to what's available is crucial. Stockpiling beans, grains, and simple seasonings ensures you can always prepare a filling dish. The medieval mindset was that food didn't need to be fancy. It needed to keep you alive and strong. Foraging and wildcrafting filled the gaps when stores ran thin. No matter how well peasants planned, winters or droughts could still leave cupboards bare. Foraging became a lifeline. Wild greens like nettles, dandelion leaves and sorrel were nutrient powerhouses. Berries, nuts, mushrooms and wild game supplemented diets when fields produced little. Knowledge of the landscape was as valuable as tools. Preppers today often overlook this skill, yet knowing which weeds in your backyard are edible can be as life-saving as stored food. Medieval peasants didn't separate wild from domestic, both were part of survival. When shelves are empty, the skill of recognizing food in the hedgerows, woods or fields can mean the difference between scarcity and plenty. Communal food storage and shared responsibility made survival possible. Perhaps the most underrated trick of all was collective resilience. Peasants didn't survive in isolation. Grain was often stored in communal barns, protected against theft and rot. Villages worked together in harvests and shared resources during famine. It wasn't a choice. It was survival through mutual aid. Modern prepping often emphasizes individual stockpiles, but the medieval approach proves that shared effort strengthens resilience. Neighbours who pool resources, whether tools, seeds or knowledge, can withstand shortages far better than lone individuals. In an age where disaster can strike entire regions, this medieval lesson may be the most valuable of all. What stands out about these 7 medieval tricks is not just their ingenuity, but their practicality, even today. They didn't rely on advanced technology or expensive equipment. They relied on discipline, community, and a deep understanding of food cycles. For modern preppers and self-sufficient households, these lessons are more than history. They're a blueprint for resilience. Root cellars can still keep vegetables through the winter. Fermentation can turn excess produce into vitamin-rich stores. Smoking and drying can extend protein supplies. Crop rotation maintains fertile soil. Pottage teaches flexible cooking with what's at hand. Foraging adds hidden nutrition, and shared responsibility ensures survival is stronger together. Medieval peasants didn't survive because life was easy. They survived because they worked with nature and with each other. And if we bring those same principles into our own lives, we'll be far more prepared for whatever challenges the future holds. So if you want more of these forgotten survival strategies, practical history you can use right now, make sure to subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this video with others who care about self-reliance. The secrets of the past aren't lost. They're waiting to be remembered and put into practice again.